Harnessing the Business Model of Disruptive Innovations. This is the fourth and final webinar of Xerox's Innovation Webinar Series. My name is David Goodstein, and I'm a webinar coordinator for the Outsourcing Institute. It is our pleasure to be the co-host of today's event with Xerox. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly tell you about a few tools you're able to use throughout today's session. We encourage you at any time during the presentation to submit your questions to today's speakers. To do so, please click on the questions box, type your question in the space provided, and click the submit button. Today's webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a follow-up email tomorrow, which will have a link to the recorded webinar and presentation slides. The presentation slides and recording will also be available at outsourcing.com. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly tell you about the Outsourcing Institute for those who aren't familiar with us. The Outsourcing Institute is a professional association dedicated to providing independent best practices, tools, roadshow events, and networking opportunities for all forms of outsourcing. Located at outsourcing.com, we have 70,000 members globally. OI specializes in providing low-cost and no-cost alternatives for outsourcing buyers in need of RFP tools, vendor selection assistance, training, as well as general support and coaching. For those of you in this market, we offer an array of very targeted sponsorship and promotional opportunities. Our sister company, CMS, provides recruiting services for those seeking to hire outsourced professionals experienced at buying, selling, managing, or consulting in this arena. Our contact information is at the bottom of the screen for those who have any questions. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator for today, Tom Young. Tom?
Thanks, David. My name is Tom Young. I'm an executive board member of the Outsourcing Institute, and as David mentioned, this is the fourth in a series of 4 webinars that we've done with Xerox around innovation. And with me today, I'm pleased to have 3 Xerox executives, Mira Sampath, who's the VP of Innovation and Business Transformation at Xerox, Tim Joyce, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at WDS, which is a company that Xerox recently bought a few years ago, and Raja Bala is a principal scientist and area manager at PARC, which is the Xerox's premier research facility. So today we're going to spend probably about 40 minutes going through some content. In your questions and answer box on your webinar panel, you should be able to send me some questions, and I'll syndicate those questions into the conversation. But we're going to make this as interactive as possible. So don't wait on your questions to the end. If you have something now, send it over and I'll interject. And with that, I'd like to start this off by passing this off to Mira to go over some of the content. Mira?
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining this webinar. Mira Sampath. I am part of the Xerox Services Corporate Office of Innovation. In my current role, I manage and oversee our innovation portfolio across the different lines of businesses for Xerox Services. So as Tom and Dave said, this is the 4th and final seminar in this series on innovation from Xerox. Today we will discuss disruptive innovation, a very exciting topic. Now, technological advances, new business models, and new ways of engaging highly connected, highly empowered consumers are driving transformational changes in many industries today, and certainly the ones that we, Xerox, serve. In this webinar, my co-speakers, Tim and Raja and myself, will share with you some of our insights and some exciting examples of how Xerox is helping its customers ride this wave, turning these disruptive trends into unique opportunities. Let me begin with a quick overview of innovation at Xerox. Next slide, please. As we all know, Xerox has a very long history and tradition of innovation, evidenced by a very strong and diverse, ever-enriched portfolio of products and offerings, many significant awards and recognition, and a rich patent portfolio. Today, as we have transformed into a services-led company, our focus and commitment to innovation continues to be very strong. Next slide, please. Certainly, with our transformation into one of the world's most diversified business process and IT outsourcing firm, the context in which we innovate has dramatically changed. So our innovation portfolio today is focused on unique service offerings and efficient service delivery methods that support a very broad range of industries, from healthcare to financial services to transportation, and the many underlying capabilities from customer care to finance and accounting and HR services. And you will see some interesting examples later in this talk today that draw upon these different domains. Next slide, please. At a very high level, our innovation focus areas can be categorized into 4 key areas: automation, analytics, personalization and mass customization, and sustainability. Automation, which is focused on driving significant cost and labor efficiencies in business processes, draws upon our expertise in document management, machine learning, natural language understanding, and other similar domains. Analytics, which is aimed at providing actionable predictions and recommendations, leverages our competencies in text, data, image, and video processing. Personalization and mass customization provide secure, timely, context-aware, personalized solutions and services, and these are supported by our unique strengths in ethnography and contextual and behavioral reasoning. And finally, sustainability initiatives for enterprise and society really draws upon many of the competencies that I just cited, plus others like clean tech and renewable energy. So across our different research labs and the innovation functions within our businesses, we are innovating in some very critical key areas. And as we get to the examples in this talk, you will see how we are leveraging these competencies to create innovations that have the potential to transform the business process outsourcing landscape. Next slide, please. With that very quick glimpse into innovation at Xerox primarily to set the stage for what's to follow, I would like to spend some time discussing what disruptive innovation really is and what are some fundamental characteristics of such innovations. Next slide, please. First, let's start by qualifying innovation. The key point to emphasize here is that innovation is not just a new idea, it is not just an invention, but rather it is the application of these ideas in a manner that they have quantifiable impact. In other words, a successfully commercialized invention or an idea that provides unique value for the end customer. So with that,
Mira, this is Tom. Let me jump in here.
Sure.
So this is an area where I see a lot of innovative firms. They've got some really good science, but you know, kind of what you're arguing here is the innovation is more than just the science. It's the applied science. It is the ability to take it and insert it into the ecosystem, which requires not just the technology, but you have to have the business knowledge and the ability to do the change management, because a lot of these innovations, especially the ones I've reviewed from Xerox, and I know you're going to show some of them today, are very disruptive. And so there's a lot of political issues to deal with when you're inserting it. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the hurdles that Xerox sees when it implements innovation of disruptive technologies?
Absolutely, Tom, and I will be talking a little bit more about that too as we move into describing disruptive innovation. But you said it very, very nicely. I think it's not just the idea, it's not just the technology, it is the alignment of the idea with the overall business growth strategy, the business strategy. It's the alignment of the value chain. And more importantly, it is the ability to execute successfully on these ideas and the ability to successfully take these through the value chain into the market, right? I think all innovations to some extent, but certainly disruptive innovations are governed by innovating and pulling together many different dimensions, which is the technology, the business model, the value chain, the organization, so on and so forth. And when Tim, Raja, and I go through a few specific examples, we will try to point out in each of those cases what are the dimensions other than technology that we are innovating in to turn these into successful products and offerings. I'm continuing, Tom.
Yeah, that answered my question. I just wanted to emphasize that one point.
Okay, very good. So next slide, please. So innovation, we are going to classify innovation into 3 distinct types. I'll start with the most prevalent type, sustaining innovation. Sustaining innovations are typically, these are innovations in technology, and they cater to existing markets. And as we were just discussing, typically with existing and known business models. Sustaining innovations are critical. They are not to be undermined by any means, and these are critical for firms to remain competitive and to retain their differentiation in the market. Next is transformational innovations. These innovations, compared to sustaining, enable new revenue streams and new cost savings models through new offerings or new ways of delivering service. Typically, these are based on emerging technologies, and while largely based on existing value chains and existing business models, transformational innovations often enable companies to move into markets that are adjacent to the core as well, beyond just staying in their core markets. And finally, the topic of today's discussion, disruptive innovations. Unlike sustaining or transformational innovations, disruptive innovations create new markets or they completely change existing markets. And typically, this change happens when the new market created by the innovation, this may be a niche market, one that serves a very specific customer subsegment, one that is aimed at meeting an unmet customer need. These gradually, ultimately, and often unexpectedly overtake and disrupt an existing market, often disrupting an existing technology. Some very common examples, if I could cite here, are desktop computers replacing mainframes, mobile phones overtaking landlines, and digital photography completely disrupting traditional photography. So building on what we talked about before, a key point I would like to emphasize again here is that, as Tom said earlier, disruptive innovation is not just a function of technology. The disruption is caused by, certainly by advanced breakthrough technologies, but also accompanied by very new business models and perhaps significant changes along other dimensions like the value chain, the supply chain, organization, and so on. Disruptive innovations enable significant revenue growth and cost savings, and in many cases may even be essential for the very survival of the business. Disrupt or get disrupted, right? So a very simple example to illustrate the differences between doing things better, doing things differently, and doing completely different things, sustaining, transformational, and disruptive from the domain of customer care, providing call center agents with knowledge tools to make them more efficient, to cut down the call handling time, could be thought of as a sustaining innovation, significant cost savings through improving something that exists, whereas switching to an IVR system can be thought of as something doing things differently, a transformational innovation, but providing mobile self-serve application, completely avoiding the call to begin with in the first place, is doing different things, disruptive innovation. And I will not elaborate on this more. Tim is going to say a lot more about some of the disruptive innovations in the customer care space. Next, I believe. Handing over to you, Tim.
Thank you very much, Mira. So my name is Tim Joyce. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at WDS, a Xerox company. So my job is really to consider the future of customer care, consider the inventions and the research we're working on, and work out how to bring it to market in such a way that it helps the industry deliver better customer care. So I'm just going to talk very briefly in a few slides about how we're going to do that. Next slide, please. So first, really to say that Xerox is a large-scale BPO vendor, and especially in customer care. So we have a huge number of people, sites, languages supported. We earn a lot of revenue from customer care, and spend a great deal of time talking to consumers of very significant brands across the world. Three key verticals for us are the healthcare vertical, the retail vertical, and the telecoms and technology vertical. So we span quite a lot of work. Most of our interactions today are over the phone, as you'd expect, although we also increasingly support email and chat and those kind of channels. And it's really, so that's kind of the landscape of today. What I'm hoping to talk about is the landscape of tomorrow. And that's really brought about by this digital revolution, whereby people have access to many more channels that go beyond the conventional ones and can solve their customer care issues in many other ways. So if we step on to the next slide, please. So, and Mira mentioned this at the beginning of the talk, there are three key technology advances or technology trends that I see are impacting the world of customer care. So the first is we are getting much, much better at what I've called here human behavior analytics. This is what people typically call big data. It's the digital ghost that follows you around, and many of the customer care companies we'll deal with have a huge amount of data on their customers about their behaviors and their wants and needs. And the analytics and the emerging technologies of analytics allow us to understand those individual people and the groups much, much better. The second component that's coming to market, and I'm sure you all use Siri, and we've just seen Amazon launch Echo, and Google Now exists, and a whole series of technology that we group into a technology group called natural language understanding. So this is really the ability for computers to understand what you're saying without you having to click a button. So you use natural language to communicate with the computer, and we find that enables people to relax in the interaction, to be more natural, and to have a better quality interaction. And the third,
Tim,
I'm sorry.
Can I interrupt you here on the natural language understanding? Because I'd like to get some clarification from your perspective. There's two aspects to natural language understanding. One is voice to text, right? Which is the ability to understand multiple languages with multiple intonations and accents over multiple mediums, whether it be phone, speakerphone, a computer headset. Mm-hmm. And then there's what you do when you get the text. So, which is, once I have the text, and assuming it's accurate, it's actually understanding what that text means. So when I ask a question, it knows what I mean, not what I say.
Exactly, and it's that second, we call it the semantic understanding of that text that has really moved forward.
So are you guys doing, where would you say Xerox is focusing on, the first part or the second part, or both?
So we're very much focused on the second part, understanding what people mean by the words they type or the words they utter. The voice to text is, it's quite a widely developed technology at the moment, although there's subtleties still to be resolved there. But we believe that understanding, given the text, and understanding the true meaning, the true intent of the question is the crucial part. And we go slightly beyond that as well. We think that many of the interactions, in fact all of the interactions we deal with in customer care are essentially conversations. And so understanding the nature of conversations becomes increasingly important as you seek to understand human behavior and automate interactions.
Yeah, my observation is that most people are fascinated with voice to text, when the real fascination should be the computer understanding. So if I said to you, hey Tim, let's meet at the pub for a pint, are you going to make it? And you say, there's lots of ways you can say yes. You could say, I'll be late. And when you say I'll be late, you'll say, yeah, I'll be there, but I'll be late.
I'll probably say, you're buying.
And there you go.
Quite a difficult thing to interpret. And so you need a full context of the conversation to understand that.
Right, that's a nuanced way of saying yes, I'll be there.
Indeed. So natural language is very understanding is very important, and determining the true intent of the consumer. And the final bit is machine learning. And I mean, we deal in a world that's so complex you can't actually write the rules down, and that's limited us in the traditional world of customer care. We've got very complicated tools and encoding of these rules, whereas machines now can learn much better to understand that world. So those things add up to something I call mass personalization. This is really the equivalent of mass customization from the manufacturing era, and this is about building computers that understand behavior and then can naturally interact. So that's the transformation. And we see that natural interaction occurring across many channels. So it might be in your app on your smartphone. It might be in a voice-enabled device in the corner of the room. It might just be on a website or on a video conference or something like that. So it goes through many channels, but at the heart of it is mass personalization.
Tim, can you give an example of the machine learning? Because that's why I think people get a sense of, like when they're typing in a Google search, they see the predictive text coming in, but I think it's much more sophisticated than that. Can you give an example of something that you're working on?
So, for example, I mean, we do a lot of work in telecoms, and I'm sure you've called customer care to be told that the only thing that could possibly fix your phone is to reset it and lose all your pictures and contacts and everything like that. And what we do is, so whilst there's some rules, what you can actually do is learn the other types of behavior that will resolve the problem, and indeed the least cost options for the consumer to do that. So when we talk about machines learning, we're actually learning from human beings. So we have the human beings, the agents, teaching our software how to best resolve issues. So I think that's probably the best example of
so it's really using your smartest people and having the machines be able to understand what they're doing and then clone that activity.
Exactly. So exactly, following and learning from the interactions.
Great.
So I'm going to go to the next slide. So, and this is the last thing I really want to talk about. So taking those interesting technologies to market is quite challenging in such a mature industry as customer care. So what we've drawn out is the idea of a sequence of propositions that go to market that get increasingly sophisticated and actually change the way that customer care works. So if we just look at the very bottom there, this is the base offering of business process outsourcing, and we all understand that quite cleanly. It's a cost-driven conversation between the vendor and the supplier, and we talk about how many people we need to staff the seats, how many people and what time of day we need to take the calls or the chats, and how and we draw a contract up essentially to support that approach. Now, some of the technologies I've just described enable, for example, automation. So a virtual agent might be available to take calls on a website or on a mobile device. We might have automated tools that guide agents through solutions, or we may have automatic mechanisms for delivering solutions even before it's gone wrong. So when you deliver those automated tools, you're essentially no longer in a world where you're talking about calls and volumes and all the rest, but you're talking about maybe minimizing those, which is a very different proposition. We call that seats plus software. And so we've changed the metric there from being a purely cost-based conversation to one that's maybe around how many people call and how often they call. We still need to take the calls, but reducing them is part of a key metric associated with the contract. The interesting thing here is Xerox is now disrupting. We're now disrupting ourselves, because fewer calls is less revenue for us, but we are improving the customer experience, reducing hold times and things like that. The next step up this ladder is to introduce analytics to the equation and really look at listening to the customer and understanding how they're behaving, maybe in social media, maybe as they're talking to us over the phone, or maybe as they're interacting with us in stores and other places. And that enables, again, a different proposition, one that might be designed around a customer satisfaction metric. We call that customer experience management. So now we're talking about a contract between Xerox and a vendor that says, well, I want you to, ensure that our customers are happy whilst keeping costs down and making sure not too many people call in. And then finally, and this is where I get very excited about being part of Xerox, there's a potential to innovate in the business model, and this is where it truly gets disruptive. So instead of having a sort of supplier customer relationship between Xerox and our clients, we're able to say, right, okay, we're now in a partnership. And what governs that partnership? Well, you need quite a sophisticated metric. I've drawn one out here, which is called customer lifetime value, but there are others sort of assessing the value of a customer base or the value of relationships that brands have with their consumers. And once we do that, we're into very different conversations about how to grow the customer base or enhance the customer base in a number of different ways. Now, that doesn't mean the rest of it goes away, but it does mean we've changed the equation on how we do business process outsourcing through the use of this technology. Good. Well, thank you very much. I hope that made some sense, and I'm going to pass on now.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Raja?
Hi there. I'm waiting for control to come to me, and I will take it away as soon as I get that. Okay, I hope everyone can see the agenda slide. Hello, everyone. My name is Raja Bala. I'm a principal scientist and research manager at PARC in Webster, New York. My area of scientific expertise is in digital imaging and video analytics. And today I want to talk a little bit about how we're bringing that technology to mobile devices such as your smartphone and wearable devices such as Google Glass to enhance and disrupt BPO services. Just to build on the point that Mira made earlier, note that the smartphone that we've become so comfortable with today is itself an example of a disruptive technology. The ability to take high-quality images with smartphones essentially decimated the consumer digital camera industry. So we're looking to build on top of that disruption to further enhance and disrupt BPO workflows. In our research lab, we have carved out a roadmap of innovations that are evolving with time and complexity as shown here. Our entry into the mobile arena actually started off in document analytics. We helped build a mobile app called Xerox Safe Courier that's actually in the App Store today for scanning paper documents into electronic workflows. Building on this, we are now starting to monitor human behavior with cameras built into smartphones and tablets. So Tim talked about the notion of understanding customer behavior through conversations and text transcripts and sort of mining the language. We can imagine adding a dimension to this by observing a person's facial expression to gauge their emotional state in a particular conversation. So we think there might be some exciting possibilities here in customer care. And finally, going up the roadmap, we are exploring the use of wearable technology such as Google Glass to assist the worker, the mobile enterprise worker, on the go. Our technologies on the roadmap feed into multiple vertical lines of business. Today I'll give a couple of examples in the insurance and transportation industries. So that's the general landscape of the work we're doing in research and how it's playing out into various industries. Let's walk through a couple of examples. The first I want to talk about, again, is Xerox Safe Courier, a mobile app that helps scan hard copy transactional forms into an electronic BPO workflow. So let's run a little demo here to see how we would use Safe Courier in an insurance workflow. Let's say I've just had the misfortune of an auto accident and I wish to file a claim. Now, how would I do this normally? Well, I'd have to fill out a claim form, gather my paperwork, including damage estimates, photo ID, etc. I'll have to take pictures of the damage in my vehicle, collect the package, mail it via normal courier to my adjuster. If I'm lucky, I get a check in the mail in 4 weeks, or I may get a letter from the adjuster saying, I've forgotten a document, please resend the package. This causes a lot of delay and frustration. Xerox Safe Courier makes this a very streamlined and fast process. I start the app, note that it has been tailored for an insurance process. I select the claims department. I get a menu for claims-related documents to scan. I select an estimate form. I simply hold the phone over the document. It automatically takes the picture when my hand is steady. It automatically finds the document borders and trims the image. Let me pause this here just for a second. In the current version, we do all this automatically on the device, and we send an image of this cleaned up form over the net to the adjuster. In the next version, we go a step further. We analyze the contents of this transaction, extract the relevant information that the adjuster needs, and send just the information over to the adjuster, making it a much more streamlined and much more effective process. Carrying on, the next thing I do is I take pictures of the dent in my vehicle, add that into the package, bundle it all together, send it over a secure line to my adjuster. If you can imagine, those of you who have been through this sort of process using the traditional paper-based workflow, the typical turnaround time would be around the tune of several weeks. With the traditional paper workflow, this can be reduced to just a couple of days with this type of streamlined electronic process. Estimates say that costs can be reduced to as little as 20% of that of a traditional paper-based system. So this can really disrupt the way claims are processed. The role of a BPO worker, the adjuster, it can significantly change. They don't have to do a lot of manual keying in of customer information and information about the particular accident and the damage. A lot of that is done automatically, so they can move on to other sort of more intelligent tasks that require sort of true human intelligence and human skill. Note that I also showed an insurance example here. This is just one example. Xerox Safe Courier has been developed so that it can easily be repurposed and white-labeled for a wide variety of applications involving transactional forms processing, such as a mortgage application form or a student loan application form. A common example that many folks here might be familiar with is the check scanning app that a lot of banks offer that allow you to scan your check for deposit from the comfort of your home. The app extracts the relevant information and issues the deposit. Same idea here. We've generalized this to a broad variety of workloads. Okay. The next example here is bringing imaging and video analytics to wearable platforms to assist the mobile worker in a public service. The specific example we're going to talk about here is parking enforcement. When officers go on their parking beat to look for violations and issue citations, they want this process to be as quick and streamlined as possible. So faster throughput in the citation process directly results in reduced cost. Current citation issuance is actually a pretty manual process. Officers have to go out there, they have to enter the license plate number of the vehicle tag, they have to physically write down the type of violation, the vehicle make, model, take pictures for evidence. It's a pretty time-consuming process. So how can wearable technology help? What I'm going to show you here is a concept demo of a parking officer who's going on his walking beat looking for violations, wearing Google Glass as he detects and issues citations. So what you're going to see here is a live video feed from Glass. I will emphasize that this is just a concept demo to show the possibilities. It's not really an app in the market just as yet, although we do have many of the enabling technologies in our research lab ready to turn this into a real application fairly soon. So let's just play this out. Officer is walking up to this vehicle that's illegally parked. He points at the street sign, which says it's a no parking zone. We run that through our traffic sign recognition module, which tells us what kind of violation we have here. He then glances at the vehicle. We run the picture of the vehicle through the vehicle recognition module, which tells us this is a Honda Accord Model EX. He simply points at the license plate. We grab the license plate out, run it through our license plate recognition module, and it gives us the plate and history about the vehicle, the driver, and so on. This is used to automatically fill the citation with all the relevant information, as well as gather pictures for evidence. So the package is done with minimal effort. In the final step, the officer is given a recommended route to go to the next stretch in the neighborhood to look for parking violations. And there are a number of ways this can be accomplished. Some cities and jurisdictions issue sort of heat maps of parking violations, which can be downloaded onto a device like Glass, giving the officer an optimal route to walk around. Another application is we also have another project looking at using surveillance cameras on streets and in parking lots to look for vehicle dwell time. If a vehicle has been in a spot more than it should be, we can take a feed from that and directly supply it to the nearest parking enforcement officer, encouraging him to walk towards that particular vicinity to look for violations. This service can also plug into another effort we have in Xerox for dynamic pricing of parking based on occupancy. One of the nice things about unique opportunities that video offers is that it allows the officer to capture a lot more than what he's explicitly going out to do. So for example, an officer is going to issue a citation. At the same time, he can just look around. We're capturing the video with our wearable camera. He can take quick note of how many spots are occupied on a particular stretch. That information can be automatically analyzed and sent to a parking occupancy analytics system. You might also notice a vandalized street sign or a broken fire hydrant. These are just incidentals. He wasn't out looking for those sorts of things, but that can be captured with video, automatically mined, analyzed, and sent over to the respective agency for service. So this significantly, once again, disrupts not one but several workflows and accelerates the quality and speed of public services. So some of the analytics we are doing here, again, this is just a concept demo, but we're putting this into place, is that from the wearable camera, recognizing the vehicle just from the image, looking up a database and recognizing the vehicle, recognizing the license plate, recognizing the street sign, identifying the location. A GPS is going to give us approximate location, but can I look at some landmarks around me from the video and tell exactly where I am and what I'm looking at? Summarizing events. I'm looking at the vehicle, I'm looking at the parking spot, I'm looking at vehicles in the vicinity, I'm looking at pedestrians, road conditions. Can I automatically summarize the relevant information and send it out to the relevant parties for action to take place? So that was the second example. I'll be happy to take any questions. Again, the common theme here is to bring our unique expertise and innovations in image and video analytics to our all familiar mobile devices to transform and disrupt BPO processes involving, especially those that involve sort of human workers. Okay, happy to take questions. Otherwise, we can turn the floor over to Mira.
Thank you, Raja.
David, are you passing back to David? Okay, great.
Yep, good.
Okay.
So, thank you, Raja. And I'm going to talk about the last and final example for this webinar, which is on crowdsourcing. Next slide, please. So crowdsourcing, as many of you who are listening to this webinar may know already, is an emerging new workforce paradigm that completely breaks the conventional employer-employee arrangement and breaks the traditional brick-and-mortar office arrangement, if you will. Crowdsourcing is based on the idea of taking work out to a very large globally distributed virtual free agent talent base through a technology-mediated platform. So the work is being taken out to a very, very large, undefined group of people as opposed to a conventional workforce arrangement. Clearly, the crowdsourcing has been around for a few years now, perhaps a decade or so, I would say, and catching on in various domains and phases. The crowd has been used to provide services, ideas, content, answers, and I'm sure you have all heard of crowdfunding as well. The advantages of crowdsourcing are almost obvious. First, the on-demand 24/7 access to global talent, significant cost efficiencies that come from high resource utilization, and eliminating all of the traditional overheads associated with conventional workforce arrangement. Certainly, scalability, the ability to ramp up and down as and when required, elasticity that the global workforce provides, and also the ability to pay for only what you need, this on-demand pay-as-you-go model, right? So now crowdsourcing is not just an interesting workforce paradigm, it is also one that is emerging to be an industry by itself with the various platform vendors, the service providers, the workers, and the facilitators. So this is something that has the ability to completely transform or disrupt outsourcing industry as we know it today. Going back to the main theme of the webinar on disruptive innovation, we talked earlier about the fact that disruptions are not just a function of technology. I would like to re-emphasize the same point here. Certainly, there's a lot of technology involved here. That is, first of all, the technology platform that enables crowdsourcing. And beyond that, certainly, there are a number of research and technical challenges that need to be addressed in terms of how do you take a task, and particularly when you're talking about a complex business process, how do you take a task and break it down into in an automated manner into a number of micro tasks, subtasks that can then be fanned out to a very large crowd while preserving security, preserving all compliance requirements, preserving privacy, and how do you ensure that all of this gets done in a predictable and quality assured manner. So there are fundamental technologies that we can bring to bear that will make this whole process of task decomposition and aggregation automated. Certainly, one can also think about the incentive mechanisms, gamification, and so on, all of which technologies again go to make crowdsourcing successful. But beyond all of this, it is the marriage of these technology advancements with some fundamental changes in the organization model, fundamental changes in process that cause this to be a disruption. So technology, organizational changes, process changes, and new models of service delivery is what is causing the disruption here. Next slide, please. There are a number of, talking about crowdsourcing, I mentioned earlier that the crowd has been used to do a whole bunch of different activities and tasks, but talking specifically about business process crowdsourcing, I have laid out here a spectrum of different tasks where the crowd can be used. Certainly at one end are the routine, highly human-intensive tasks of data entry, digitization, particularly in the transaction processing world. And while at the other end of the spectrum are leveraging the crowd to solve some very expert, complex R&D problems, if you will, what is commonly referred to as open innovation. But between these two ends of the spectrum, there are multiple levels at which the crowd can be engaged. Certainly moving from the routine manual tasks, there are cognitive tasks and tasks that require linguistic skills and so on. Moving further down, there are tasks that require specific skills, certifications, domain knowledge, and so on. So all of these are a number of different examples of how the crowd can be effectively leveraged for business processes. One key point I would like to emphasize here is the interplay between automation and crowdsourcing. Certainly for many tasks which are routine, manual, human-intensive tasks, and we saw some examples of those earlier, automation is the holy grail. But technology has its limitations, and today, even for something like digitization of forms, systems are highly automated using technologies like OCR. However, the crowd can be used in this case, or human labor in general, to be able to overcome the limitations and shortcomings of technology. Moving on to the cognitive task, an interesting point I would like to make is not only can the crowd be used to solve problems that require cognitive skills like identifying the right image, translating a document from one language to another, but the crowd can also be used to augment machine learning. Tim talked earlier about what machine learning is, and a key piece of machine learning being how the software learns from humans. So that training for a machine learning system can also be done using the crowd. So use the crowd to build your training database, then let automation take over, automation and machine learning, and then again, as and when necessary, the crowd is used to do things that cannot quite fully be fulfilled by automation. So very many interesting ways in which the crowd can be leveraged, and the key point is we need a judicious integration of automation and internal workforces and the crowd to cause this disruption in the business processing outsourcing landscape. Today we are exploring multiple activities on how crowdsourcing can be leveraged within business processes. We do not have the time to get into the specifics today, and David, perhaps that's the topic for a future seminar. But I would like to end this piece by saying that with our unique and deep domain expertise, with our technology expertise in document management, machine learning, and so on, all of that coupled with not only access to our own very large global workforce, but also the recognition of the brand to be able to attract a large global workforce, Xerox is very well positioned to ride this wave of disruptive innovation as well. So that brings us, Tom, do you have any questions?
Well, I have some wrap-up questions that I think is not on the crowdsourcing, but let me ask this question. I mean, we've heard 3 or 4 different innovative technologies and how this is going to impact the business. But so let me ask all 3 of you for your. One of the things that I've seen in the implementation of any disruptive technology is understanding how, let me just use the term antibodies. When you go into an environment, a client environment or a customer environment where you're trying to implement this, and you implement this disruptive technology, someone's status quo gets disrupted. Can you talk a little bit about how you try to overcome that from a Xerox perspective, and whether or not you see that as a real obstacle to the adoption of innovation?
I will share a quick point and then let Tim and Raja address that. One of the, certainly it definitely is a big challenge. One of the ways that we address that, Tom, is that fundamentally we believe in co-innovation with our customers. For many of the technologies that we are working on today, we start working with our customers all at the very early stages of our innovation. So they became, our customers become co-innovation partners, and they work with us in the development of these technologies from a very early stage through their prototype, to their piloting, to ultimately launching them within our customer environments. So that, I think, is one way that the risks of customers completely rejecting a new and disruptive innovation is mitigated. Perhaps Tom and Raja would like to add more. Tim and Raja would like to add more.
Yeah, so this is Tim Joyce. So there's an element of the status quo that needs to be disrupted, certainly in customer care. I mean, I think that we all work in this industry, and when we talk to people who don't, and they say, oh, I work in customer care, the first thing they'll mention is some customer care nightmare that they've been involved in. And indeed, when you talk to people on the front line taking calls in customer care, they'll have very many stories about frustrated customers and quite tough conditions. So we look for the win-win in this, really, to say, we're providing automation to prevent, very frequent calls or the more frequent calls from actually ever coming through, and that reduces the repetitive nature of some of the work that people do. And we're looking for innovation that understands how people behave and what people do, and that allows the managers of those sort of environments to add greater value back into the businesses they work. So if you can understand what is frequently going wrong with your product or service and quantify it, as an operational manager, you can take that to your product or service design team and say, look, this is how it should be improved. So we try and generate actionable insights. So we try and enhance across the board, but let's be clear that the improvements we're looking for are positive to all of the people who are engaged.
So Tim, let me expand on that. So one of the questions we have from the audience today has to do with techniques for addressing the disruption. Typically, you'll see the disruption at the horizontal layers, the people who are running the operations. Mm-hmm. They seem to want to resist the change at some level because they think it's going to mess with their work world or their personal world, whereas mm-hmm. the senior executives are the ones who really want the change. Have you found that the use of things like steering committees and things like that are effective changes, or is it more sophisticated than that?
So what we often do is we map out the total change. So we look at, and you're right, in fact, it impacts multiple stakeholders all across the business. So we map out the total change and create alignment about those goals, around those goals, so everyone can see how the change that they're experiencing fits into the big picture and how that big picture is positive. And then I guess the second thing we do, and it's quite a conventional approach in a change management process, is to create quick wins. So if the most effective thing you can do is redesign your self-care website or deploy a virtual agent or something along those lines, and you can do that and you can show how the organization and everyone involved is impacted significantly by just having more time to spend with the rest of the customers who aren't now calling in or something along those lines, then everyone's happy and you get that engagement in the change process.
Great. Another question we had from the audience today is of the technologies that have been shown today, how many are actually in production in terms of being offered by Xerox versus, I'll call it alpha or beta testing?
So I can pick that up. We have 3 technologies that I showed there that are products in the marketplace, fully available today. And those are our social voice of the customer tools that allows our clients to see what their customers are talking about on social media and understand how that impacts how they experience the service. We have a virtual agent that's launched, and that will sit on a website or on a mobile device and listen to the customer, understand what their problem is, and either solve it itself if it can, or recommend the best channel for it to be solved. And we have what's called Agent IQ launched, which is a tool that supports the agent in their interaction whilst learning from what they're doing. And that learning essentially sits in our platform, and then gets redistributed through other channels like the virtual agent. So those are 3 things in market, and the rest is being built and coming. Yeah, well, that's where we are today.
So Raja, would you like to talk about the technologies you described and the state of
Yes, sure. So out of the 3 technologies I talked about, Xerox Safe Courier is in the market. It's in the App Store. It's not positioned as a consumer app, so you could possibly download Xerox Safe Courier on your smartphone, but probably can't do much with it because the way to operationalize it is to tie it to a Xerox account. So it really is a business app, but it's out there. And version 2, which has a lot more of these intelligent document analytics, is expected to roll out early next year. The other two technologies, I briefly talked about facial expression analysis. That's very much in the labs. The parking enforcement application is one, to Mira's point, that we're actually co-innovating by talking to parking enforcement officers. We're in active conversations with the City of Berkeley parking office, who came to us and asked about how we could use wearable technology. They're very open to these ideas. So that's a little bit further along, but still sort of in demo phase, and we think we have a good path out to commercialization within the next, let's say, year and a half. If I may take the floor to also address Tom's earlier question, which is a very good one, about the sort of impact and possible resistance to automation. My personal belief is that automation should be done intelligently and respectfully. So the philosophy we've had with our technology is let the machine do what the machine does best, which frees up the human to do what the human does best. So in talking to people in BPO, in the context of the Xerox Safe Courier app and how it sort of eliminates some of the steps in the back-end BPO process, our customers have said it actually frees up your claims adjuster to go off and do some more creative things that involve true sort of human intelligence and intervention, and reduce the time taken to do manual, arduous data entry. So again, to Mira's point, if we sort of co-innovate and position the technology right to help our clients rather than to sort of displace or disrupt in that sense, then I think it works very well.
Great. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour here, and we've had a nice discussion. I would just throw it back to the panel and say if there's any more closing comments for people who are listening and they want to learn more about what they can do with Xerox, give a little bit of follow-up in terms of how they'll tap into this. I know this webinar will be stored in the Xerox internal network and be able to be shared. And so I'd throw it back to you to wrap this up and just let people know how they can get more information if they'd like to learn more. Mira?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. So, Tom, thank you for moderating a wonderful session. It was our pleasure to participate. It was very nice to have this opportunity to talk about some of the key innovations coming from Xerox. All three of us, Raja, Tim, and I, are available anytime anyone in this panel, in this audience, would like to contact us for further details. And yes, I do believe that the webinar will be posted soon on the Xerox external website. We may be able, I do not have the exact link, Tom, but I think we should be able to get that to folks here.
Great. Well, thank you. David, I'm going to pass it to you to wrap up then.
Okay, great. So I just want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. On behalf of the Outsourcing Institute, I want to thank Mira, Tim, and Raja for the presentation, and thank everybody for joining. Have a great day.